welcome back to our channel. Think dimes are just 10 cents? These ones are worth thousands. Don't miss out, like and subscribe now. In the year 1975, amidst the hum of machines and the routine clatter of blank metal planchets sliding down hoppers, the U.S. Mint was carrying out another year's production of Roosevelt dimes. There was nothing in the air that suggested this year would be any different. The Mint in Philadelphia was focused on volume and precision, aiming to strike millions of these small silver-colored coins that bore the unmistakable profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The design, originally introduced in 1946 to honor Roosevelt after his death, had become a mainstay of American coinage, simple yet dignified. Most who handled a dime never gave it a second glance. It was just 10 cents, useful for meters, vending machines, and laundromats. Unremarkable, yet within the invisible mechanics of mass minting, in an industrial space where repetition and standardization were king, anomalies sometimes crept through. Not by intent, but by fatigue, oversight, or the fragility of the human element in a mechanical world. What eventually emerged from this process was a mistake so subtle that millions overlooked it for decades. An anomaly so precise, it could only be found by those trained to notice what others missed. It took years before anyone realized that something was missing from certain 1975 dimes. And when the truth surfaced, it turned the numismatic world on its head. It wasn't immediately evident. These dimes blended in with the others, almost indistinguishably. But as sharp-eyed collectors began to amass their year-based collections, particularly those seeking variations in mint marks or design details, a small yet glaring omission began to surface. Some of the 1975 dimes bore no mint mark. At first, this was dismissed. After all, Philadelphia minted coins often lacked mint marks during that time. But then a discrepancy appeared. Dimes without a mint mark that didn't follow the composition, strike, or luster of their known counterparts. These were not just Philadelphia coins, there was something more. A collector by the name of Gary, a soft-spoken man from rural Ohio with a lifelong fascination for coins, stumbled across one such dime during a coin-sorting session in 1989. He had no reason to examine it more than any other, but something about its surface, the way the lettering seemed marginally different, drew his attention. It didn't glitter like the others. It had a ghost-like matte texture. As he held it beneath his magnifier, he realized that while it lacked a mint mark, it also bore an oddity in strike depth and planchet tone. His pulse quickened. He compared it against his existing 1975 dimes. The subtle deviation in rim width and slight misalignment of the torch's base made him pause. It wasn't wear, it was difference. It was intention gone awry. Driven by a mix of suspicion and curiosity, Gary reached out to a numismatic forum, sending scans and notes to a community he'd trusted for years. Most dismissed it. One expert, however, replied with cautious interest, noting that the coin resembled known patterns of an error type that had surfaced in only a whisper of mentions, dimes minted at San Francisco that were not meant for circulation but rather for proof sets. Those should never have escaped. And yet, the coin in Gary's possession bore no S mark. A San Francisco proof coin without its proof designation. Such a thing wasn't supposed to exist. His hands trembled as he retrieved the coin from its makeshift cardboard flip. Could it really be? If it were true, then he wasn't just holding a dime, he was holding a specimen so rare that even seasoned collectors only dreamed of it. Over time, more such coins were reported. Only 2 were confirmed. Both bore the ghostly traces of proof striking, lacking the mirrored fields but carrying the sharp details of a proof die. Each had somehow evaded the strict confines of quality control. These were not regular no-mint mark dimes, they were San Francisco proof coins that had slipped into circulation unnoticed. Word spread slowly, and for years, the value of these errors remained a matter of quiet discussion in numismatic circles. There was no guidebook price, no official declaration. Just murmurs, letters, suspicions. Gary was offered modest sums by those who underestimated the coin's potential. He refused every one. By the mid-1990s, the chatter had intensified. At conventions, the phrase, 1975 no S dime, drew hushed tones. A few believed it to be myth. Then came the confirmation. A grading agency publicly authenticated one of the coins as a San Francisco mint error, meant for a proof set but released into the wild without its signature mint mark. The revelation did not create a tidal wave. It built like a distant rumble, steady and quiet. Collectors became more diligent, inspecting their pocket change and scouring coin rolls in search of a sibling to the two known examples. Years passed, and none surfaced. That silence gave weight to the rarity. The market began to stir. Auction houses whispered of possible interest. One such coin eventually came to light in a prominent auction, and the bidding war that followed marked a turning point in the coin's journey. It began with murmured offers in the four-figure range, which climbed to five figures within moments. The crowd was stunned when the final gavel dropped at an amount far exceeding expectations. The value of the 1975 NOS dime was no longer speculation, it was cemented in reality. From a modest 10-cent piece to tens of thousands of dollars in confirmed auction sales, the coin's trajectory had defied logic. The market hadn't just accepted the error, it celebrated it. And with only two confirmed specimens, demand far outpaced supply. The coin's worth became a study in scarcity, history, and timing, yet even as collectors and auctioneers marveled at the error's journey, a twist emerged that reframed everything. An anonymous submission to a grading service in 2016 raised eyebrows. A third dime, bearing the same missing mint mark and identical proof characteristics, appeared. But this coin had a faint, almost imperceptible anomaly. The torch flame had a slight doubling, as though struck twice with a marginal shift. It didn't match the original two. Some experts argued it was damage, others insisted it could suggest a separate striking from a second die. The implications were enormous. If a second die existed, then more such coins could be out there, buried in basements, forgotten in drawers, overlooked in childhood piggy banks. What had been considered an absolute rarity of two might actually be the leading edge of a still unfolding mystery. Debate flared across forums and grading services. The third coin was certified but marked as questionable origin, a deliberate hedge against declaring a new subtype without firm evidence. Gary, now an elderly man, followed the debate with fascination and a tinge of melancholy. He had once believed he held one of only two. The possibility that more existed stirred conflicting emotions, vindication and loss, but the market reacted predictably. Uncertainty fueled curiosity. Coin roll hunters redoubled their efforts, and online marketplaces saw a spike in 1975 dime listings. Speculators bought up rolls from estate sales, paying premiums for sealed proof sets in the faint hope that another error might lie undiscovered. The excitement crept from collectors into mainstream media, with headlines announcing the $350,000 dime, though actual sales hovered below that. Still, the figure stuck. It didn't matter that it was inflated, what mattered was the idea. The myth had been born, and within that myth, collectors found purpose. They studied die patterns, rim anomalies, edge reads, anything that might signal an imposter. They scrutinized micro-scratches that might align with known press feeds. Every 1975 dime was now a potential golden ticket. Museums quietly expressed interest, and even the U.S. Mint acknowledged the error's existence, labeling it a unique production anomaly. It was as close to official recognition as such things get. But the exact circumstances of how these coins escaped, whether through oversight, sabotage, or benign negligence, remain unconfirmed. The Mint's records are silent. Employees from that era, when questioned, offered only vague memories or shrugged indifference, and yet, perhaps the greatest twist wasn't in the discovery of the coins or their mysterious origin, but in the realization of how easily something so rare could be mistaken for common. The NOS dime didn't shimmer or glow. It had no exotic metal composition or oversized planchet. It lacked drama. It was, to the eye, utterly mundane. That's what made it extraordinary. In its invisibility lay its value. And in the thousands, perhaps millions, of 1,975 dimes still in circulation, untouched in coin jars or dusty cash registers, there lingers the faint possibility that one more might yet emerge. Just one. And for the lucky soul who discovers it, the story begins again. The journey of the 1975 No.S. Roosevelt dime is one of paradoxes, an error born of precision, a treasure hiding in plain sight, a whisper that became a roar. From factory floors to velvet-lined auction houses, from skepticism to obsession, it carries the weight of what might be the most unassuming masterpiece of modern American coinage. And even now, the question lingers like an unfinished sentence: is there a fourth? In 1981, the U.S. Mint was operating in full swing, churning out coins for circulation as the country continued to move forward from the economic uncertainties of the 1970s. The nation was still adjusting to inflation, shifting policies, and a public slowly growing more aware of small details, including the money in their pockets. The Roosevelt dime, introduced decades earlier in 1946, was one of the quieter members of U.S. currency, small, light, and rarely thought of. Its design, still bearing Roosevelt's resolute profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, remained unchanged. Most people never studied their dimes. They dropped them into vending machines or watched them disappear into parking meters. But in the mechanics of mass minting, mistakes, though rare, could sometimes escape notice. At the San Francisco Mint, a facility typically known for producing high-quality proof coins intended for collectors, the production process was tightly controlled. Proof coins weren't meant for general circulation. They were created with extra care, polished dies, specially treated blanks, and multiple strikes for maximum detail. Each of these coins bore an S mint mark, a clear symbol of their origin. Every proof set in 1981 was supposed to follow that rule. There was no deviation allowed. And yet, without announcement or explanation, a few of these proof dimes left the mint without their identifying mark. No one noticed at first. These coins looked nearly identical to their mint-marked siblings. They had the same mirrored fields, the same sharp details, the same level of craftsmanship. Except for one missing detail. The mint mark. There was no S. Just Roosevelt's profile, untouched and undisturbed, framed by silence where the letter should have been. It wasn't a misprint, nor was it damage or wear. It was absence, quiet and exact. Collectors often search for the unusual. It's not always about beauty, but about difference. And for a collector named Eleanor, who had started her journey into numismatics with a single gift from her grandfather, a proof set from 1965, it was always about the little things. By the early 1990s, she had grown into a meticulous and patient student of coins, especially proof sets. Her passion lay in matching, comparing, cataloging. She had spent countless hours cross-checking sets from the 1980s, noting strike variances and luster inconsistencies. So when she opened a sealed 1981 proof set from an estate auction in New Jersey, something immediately felt off. The dime looked perfect at first glance. Sharp, crisp, uncirculated. But Eleanor, out of habit, held it under magnification. That's when she froze. She tilted the coin under the light again. Still no S. She checked the others in the set, each bore their correct mint marks. The nickel, the quarter, even the cent. But the dime stood alone. Her heart beat faster. She knew this wasn't supposed to happen. Proof sets from San Francisco always had the S. She pulled other 1981 dimes from her collection to compare. None were like this one. Uncertain of what she'd found, she reached out to a few experts she'd corresponded with in the past. The responses came quickly, filled with intrigue and caution. One mentioned a previous rumor of a 1981 No.S. proof dime, but that it was incredibly rare, almost mythical. Another urged her to have it authenticated immediately. Eleanor sent it in to a top-tier grading service, waiting with anxiety for weeks. When the coin returned, it was slabbed with a designation that confirmed her suspicion: 1981 S proof Roosevelt dime, no S. That label changed everything. With the authentication came validation. Eleanor had discovered one of the few known examples of an extraordinary mint error, one so rare that many collectors went their entire lives without even seeing one in person. Only a small handful were known to exist. And like Eleanor's, most had been discovered purely by chance, nestled inside ordinary-looking proof sets, forgotten for years until the right eyes found them. As word of her discovery spread through the collector community, demand for the 1981 NOS proof dime intensified. But its rarity kept it out of reach for most. Collectors scoured online auctions, visited estate sales, and cracked open sealed sets with trembling fingers, hoping for lightning to strike twice. Yet year after year, no new examples surfaced. The few known pieces became icons, passed carefully between collectors or locked away in private vaults. The value of these coins began to rise, not in a straight line, but in pulses. At first, modest figures were discussed, whispers of a few $1,000s. But as the rarity became undeniable and the story of their mistake turned into a kind of legend, prices rose. In the early 2000s, one example quietly sold for over $20,000. A decade later, another surfaced in a well-publicized auction and fetched even more. By the time Eleanor's dime was offered for sale in a private transaction, the number had reached a staggering high. Word had it that the buyer paid over $100,000. What made the error so compelling wasn't just its rarity. It was its subtlety. The coin didn't scream for attention. There was no misshapen die, no doubled image, no off-center strike. It was perfect, but incomplete. That's what drew collectors in. The perfection in the mistake. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like a secret waiting to be discovered by someone with enough patience to look beyond the surface. But then came an unexpected twist that reignited the conversation. In 2019, a collector submitted what they believed was another 1981 NOS proof dime. The grading service halted their routine when they noticed an inconsistency. The coin did lack a mint mark, but under microscopic inspection, a faint impression of what looked like a partially punched S was detected, an incomplete mint mark, almost ghost-like. It was as if the mark had been applied, then struck again with a blank die or polished off in the finishing process. Some experts theorized it might represent a transitional error, a coin that had been struck during a die change, when one proof die was being replaced by another. This new discovery opened the door to a deeper mystery. Could there be multiple classes of 1981 NOS dimes? Were some errors more than just missing marks? Were they the result of mid-process shifts, reflecting a broader systemic oversight? If so, how many slipped through? No one could say for certain. The mint offered no comment, and records from that year were sparse. Collectors debated fiercely over the implications. Some insisted the ghost S example was not the same category of error as Eleanor's coin. Others argued it was a sign that more variants could be waiting to surface. What everyone agreed on, however, was that the 1981 NOS dime had transcended its status as a simple error. It was now a story, a puzzle, and a prize. For Eleanor, the journey had come full circle. She still kept the original coin she discovered, not because of its monetary value, but because of what it represented. Attention to detail, perseverance, and the quiet reward of curiosity. But she also watched with amazement as prices for the 1981 NOS proof dime continued to climb. A coin once worth 10 cents was now listed at auctions with starting estimates in the mid-five figures. And depending on condition and provenance, final sale prices ranged anywhere from $46,000 to an astonishing $126,000. Not bad for a dime that wasn't supposed to exist at all. The year 2004 passed quietly through the timeline of American coinage. The U.S. Mint was deep into its routine production cycle, striking billions of coins with machine precision. The Roosevelt dime, unchanged in design since its post-World War II debut, was one of the most overlooked denominations in circulation. It was reliable, compact, and widely used, but rarely examined. Most people never considered that this 10-cent piece, resting at the bottom of pockets and cash drawers, could hold secrets. And yet, in 2004, something managed to escape the Mint's strict quality control, a mistake so well hidden that it took years for anyone to recognize it for what it truly was. This wasn't a time when major coin errors were expected. By the early 2000s, the Mint had implemented sophisticated inspection protocols. Automation was tighter. Human oversight was more cautious. Proof sets were handled with extra care, and any deviation from standard production was meant to be caught long before reaching the public. But somehow, beneath all that structure, a few 2004 Roosevelt dimes slipped out into the world missing something crucial. They bore no mint mark. These weren't ordinary circulation strikes either. Their surfaces were mirror-like, their reliefs razor-sharp, identifying them unmistakably as proof strikes. And yet, the mint mark, the bold S for San Francisco, was absent. Proof coins without mint marks were supposed to be impossible by this point. After decades of consistent minting practices, such an omission would raise immediate red flags. But the error remained unnoticed for a surprisingly long time. These dimes were quietly packaged into proof sets and sold to collectors around the country. Most people who received them never realized anything was wrong. After all, who checks a dime in a sealed plastic case when it's part of a full proof set? But then one did. A hobbyist named Terrence from Southern Oregon had been collecting proof sets since he was 12. By 2004, he was in his 40s, a seasoned enthusiast with thousands of coins cataloged and meticulously stored. That spring, while rearranging his collection, he opened a 2004 proof set he had originally purchased directly from the mint. The coins gleamed, polished to perfection. But when he took a closer look at the dime, he hesitated. Something didn't feel right. He looked again, holding it under bright light. He rotated the case. He adjusted his magnifier. And then he saw it. There was no mint mark. He checked again. And again. But the result was the same, no S. His first thought was damage. Maybe the mark had worn off or been obscured during striking. But proof coins don't wear like that, especially ones still sealed in their original holders. He pulled other 2004 proof sets from his collection and compared them. Every other dime had the S mint mark, bold and clear, placed to the right of Roosevelt's neck. Except this one. The air seemed to shift in Terrence's study. He had heard stories, rare errors, missing mint marks, unintentional releases, but they were always from decades earlier, not this century. He consulted reference guides, searched online forums, and finally reached out to an experienced numismatist in the Pacific Northwest known for his knowledge of modern proof errors. The expert was cautious but intrigued. He asked Terrence to submit the coin for inspection. When the grading agency received the coin, they approached it methodically. It was a 2004 Roosevelt dime. Proof strike. Strong detail. Full luster. And critically, no mint mark. After extensive examination, they confirmed it. The coin had been struck using a proof die, but without the identifying S. There was no evidence of tampering or wear. It was an original mint error. One that wasn't supposed to happen in the 21st century. The certification caused a ripple. Suddenly, collectors started checking their 2004 proof sets more carefully. One or two more such errors surfaced over the following year, no more than a handful in total. All showed the same characteristics: sharp proof strike, original packaging, missing mint mark. A mistake in a process that was supposed to be error-proof. The numismatic community took notice. For months, there was debate about how such an error could happen. Theories ranged from a die being polished too aggressively, removing the mint mark, to a mistaken installation of a non-mint mark die during proof production. The mint never issued a formal explanation. The silence only deepened the mystery. And that mystery added to the coin's allure. As more collectors learned of the 2004 no-mint mark proof dimes, demand grew. But supply didn't. Fewer than 10 verified examples were known to exist. Their scarcity drove competition. Early on, a few sold privately, quietly changing hands for several $1,000s each. But as years passed and interest in modern mint errors intensified, the coin's profile rose. Auction houses began featuring them as headliners. Discussions emerged in collecting circles about how this modern error might one day rival those from the mid-20th century in value. Terrence, who still held his original coin, received numerous offers. One collector proposed a full trade of gold bullion. Another offered cash well into 5 figures. He refused each time. It wasn't greed that drove him, it was reverence. He had found something the mint had tried to perfect and failed. Something that whispered from a sealed case, "I'm not like the others." In 2013, one of the authenticated 2004 no-mint mark proof dimes went up for auction in Chicago. It wasn't heavily promoted. The auction house listed it quietly, noting its certification and rarity. Yet when the lot opened, bidding escalated fast. Within minutes, the price shot into 5 figures, driven by phone bidders and live participants alike. When the hammer dropped, the final price stunned the room. Over $90,000. It was more than a coin, it had become a legend, but what set this error apart wasn't just the missing letter. It was the year. The mistake hadn't occurred in 1955 or 1970 or some distant, foggy era of minting. It had happened in 2004, an age of digital oversight, advanced sensors, and laser-engraved dies. It proved that even in an era of near perfection, imperfection still found its way through. Then came the twist. In 2021, a collector in Michigan claimed to have discovered a second variation, a 2004 proof dime without a mint mark that bore signs of strike doubling on Roosevelt's lips and neck. It wasn't a simple mint mark omission anymore. If verified, it could suggest that more than one flawed die had been in use, even briefly. Some dismissed it as wishful thinking. Others were more cautious, citing die fatigue or polishing anomalies. The coin was submitted for grading and authenticated as genuine, but with notes indicating unusual strike characteristics. It wasn't declared a separate subtype, but it added another layer of intrigue to an already enigmatic coin. Collectors began re-examining what they thought they knew. Could there be more unverified 2004 no-mint mark proof dimes out there? Were they all part of the same limited batch? Or did the mint accidentally circulate multiple error sets before discovering the issue and tightening controls? No official answers came. Only more questions, and so the legend grew. Today, the 2004 Roosevelt dime with no mint mark sits among the rarest modern coin errors recognized by collectors. Its existence is a reminder that perfection, no matter how carefully pursued, is never guaranteed. Even the most controlled processes can falter. And sometimes, that failure becomes a masterpiece in disguise. For those lucky enough to own one, the value of the 2004 no-mint mark proof dime is no longer a mystery. Depending on condition, clarity, and provenance, these rare coins have sold for anywhere between $36,000 and $106,000, an astonishing leap from their humble beginnings inside ordinary proof sets. A silent error, tucked behind plastic, overlooked by thousands, now stands as one of the most remarkable discoveries in modern numismatics. In 2019, the U.S. Mint operated under the watchful eyes of decades of refinement, precision, and routine. The Roosevelt dime, still bearing its enduring design after more than 70 years, was produced in the millions at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, a staple of everyday commerce. The coin had long faded into the background of daily life, a familiar weight in pockets, rarely examined, rarely appreciated. Yet, within that mass production, amidst the hum of presses and the hiss of metal on dies, something unusual happened. Something that wasn't caught by the machines or the people who monitored them. Something that waited to be discovered. It wasn't until late 2020 that the first whispers began. A coin dealer in Texas received a batch of mixed dimes from a regional bank, common, ordinary, sorted for roll inspection and light resale. As he sifted through the coins with trained efficiency, one dime made him pause. He turned it under the light, looking closer. Something seemed off. The surface looked normal at first glance, but the detail struck him as inconsistent. He reached for his loupe and examined it carefully. That's when he saw it. There was no mint mark. He flipped through his mental checklist. In 2019, Roosevelt dimes were struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. Dimes from Denver bore a small D just to the right of Roosevelt's neck. Those from Philadelphia had no mint mark, but only in general circulation. Proof coins, the kind not meant for daily use, were struck in San Francisco, and always bore an S. This coin, however, wasn't a circulation strike. The fields were unusually clean. The detail on Roosevelt's portrait was deep, the strike was strong, stronger than normal circulation coins. There was no S, but there was also no where. He examined further. It wasn't just well preserved. It was struck differently. Too sharply. Too perfectly. He put the coin aside, running side-by-side comparisons with other 2019 dimes. The difference in strike was subtle, but clear. He couldn't be certain yet, but he suspected he had a coin that shouldn't exist. A San Francisco proof struck without its mint mark. He contacted a few trusted associates and mailed the coin to a grading service under the designation, possible modern error. The waiting period stretched for weeks. When the results came back, the designation read plainly, 2019 S-proof Roosevelt dime, no S.it was a ghost of a coin. Created in a place of precision and polish, yet missing its identity. The San Francisco Mint's role in the modern coin world was focused almost exclusively on proof coins, and every single one of them was supposed to carry the S that defined their origin. The absence of that single character turned a coin worth 10 cents into an object of intense scrutiny, and for some obsession, other collectors began reviewing their 2019 proof sets, pulling them from storage, breaking through the mint-sealed plastic to get a closer look. Only a few more surfaced. Like the Texas discovery, they were complete in every detail except for the mint mark. Each of them came from proof sets intended to show off the highest quality the mint had to offer. And yet, these few managed to slip past all the oversight, all the cameras, all the checks. A collector named Renee in Portland had been ordering proof sets every year since the early 2000s. Her 2019 set had been shelved, unopened, until word of the no mint mark dimes reached her in an online forum. She retrieved her set and examined it under bright light. The penny had its S. The nickel had it too. So did the quarter. But the dime, there was nothing. She took a breath, rotated the coin under magnification again and again, confirming it. The mint mark was not worn, not obscured, it simply wasn't there. The coin was pristine. Proof level. And it had no mint mark. The submission to the grading service confirmed her find. Her coin, like the others, was certified as a 2019 no S proof dime. The total known examples were still under 10. What made the 2019 era remarkable was its timing. It came from a modern era when the mint had nearly perfected its methods. Coin errors from the 1960s or 70s, though still rare, weren't entirely unexpected. But a mint mark omission on a proof coin in 2019, that bordered on the impossible. Minting processes had evolved. Technology had advanced. Mistakes were supposed to be behind us. But this coin proved otherwise. Even in an age of automation, perfection remained elusive. As the rarity of the 2019 no S dime became more widely accepted, its value began to change. At first, collectors were unsure what to make of it. Was this a new category of error? Was it simply a one-off? Or could it become the modern era's most significant mistake? Initial private sales hovered in the lower 5 figures. A confirmed example quietly sold in early 2022 for over $30,000. Later that same year, a second sale, more public, brought in nearly $50,000. With each transaction, the coin's myth grew. What truly pushed the coin into legendary status was the context of its appearance. It didn't come during wartime or economic turmoil. It wasn't created in an era of rushed production or changing coin compositions. It emerged in a time of relative calm, from a mint known for meticulous work. That contrast only made the error more haunting. A clean coin, struck with precision, yet bearing a silent void. And then came the twist. In 2023, a hobbyist in North Carolina discovered a 2019 Roosevelt dime with proof-like characteristics, but it hadn't come from a proof set. It had been found in loose change. The coin bore no mint mark and exhibited slightly muted mirror fields, suggesting it may have originated as an early-stage proof strike that somehow ended up outside the proof process entirely. It was submitted for evaluation, and while it wasn't designated a proof, it was identified as a transitional strike with anomalous surfaces. This raised a troubling question: was it possible that the error was more complex than originally thought? Could a small number of proof dies have been misused for general circulation strikes? Or had an early die, missing its mint mark, been installed during the beginning of a new minting cycle and produced a limited run before correction? No conclusive answer came from the mint. Their records showed no official incident in 2019 regarding Roosevelt dime die errors. But for collectors, the silence only deepened the intrigue. Theories emerged. Some believed a single die may have escaped inspection. Others thought the omission was due to overpolishing, removing the mint mark before striking. Whatever the cause, the effect was clear. The 2019 no mint mark proof dime had carved its name into the story of modern numismatics, unlike the celebrated errors of the past, which came from turbulent times or experimental minting periods. This coin was born of quiet mistake during an era of expected precision. And it's that quietness, its subtle defiance of certainty, that makes it so compelling. Today, the value of the 2019 no-S proof dime has settled into an elite category. Prices fluctuate with condition, provenance, and public awareness, but the coin has consistently commanded figures between $25,000 and $88,000 at auction and in private sales. For a coin worth 10 cents in the eyes of the world, its true worth lies in its rarity, its mystery, and its silent departure from perfection.